Thanks, Tonya, for sitting down and talking to me. It takes a little bit of bravery to sit down for an interview. I've been interviewed a lot of times in the past.
No,
Camera.
No, I have not. So thanks for doing it, though.
It's my own little news show. I think we're calling it Around Town now. I think we settled on that name. But tell everybody who you are and what you do.
My name is Tonya Buchanan, and I'm the executive director at Parachute Butler County Casa. So we recruit and train regular community volunteers to help kids that are in the system for child abuse or neglect.
All right, so let's unpack that a little bit. That's a lot. What's a CASA?
So a CASA is a community member who goes through training and uses their advocacy skills they have in their life to help abused and neglected kids. We all advocate for people we care about, whether it's our kids, our families, our parents, ourselves. We help community members learn how to use those skills to help kids that are in the juvenile court system due to child abuse or neglect. So they all have an open case with Children's Services and juvenile court.
So it's one person. Is there any certain background or education they have to try to become a CASA?
No, all of our CASAs have to be at least 21. They have to be passionate and care about kids. They have to pass a very thorough background check because we're giving access to vulnerable youth. And then they're assigned to work with one family once they complete training to kind of help make sure the kids stay a priority in the overburdened court and child welfare system.
And it's just one volunteer that gets some training with you guys, and then they get a case. Is it with one child or is it multiple children?
Usually most of our volunteers work with one child or one family. It depends. One of the other things is all of our volunteers bring skills with them. And we try to get to know the CASAs during training and match them with a family. So some of our retired teachers work great on kids who have a lot of educational issues, or nurses on our kids who have a lot of health and medical issues. So we try to get to know people and use our talents to help other kids and families here in Butler County.
So is that part of your job and your team's job, kind of assessing, who are these volunteers that we're getting and trying to put them with the right person, the right case?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I already know the answer to this question. I mean, some of these cases are going to be tough to deal with, right? And obviously we're not going to get in detail of any certain case, but like give the people watching this maybe an idea of some of the things kids in our community here in Butler County are going through.
It is a really hard time to be a parent. We've learned, coming post-COVID, kids, a lot of the cases that we have, the families are involved with Children's Services for drug addiction or mental health. It's really hard to access services. And if we think of things that we've tried to change in our lives, it's not easy to do. If we're trying to eat healthy or to exercise, let alone deal with severe mental health or drug addiction. So we work with the kids once they've been involved with the system. Many of our kids, when we start working with them, are in foster care or removed from their parents.
Okay.
So our volunteers really get to know the kids. We see them wherever they're placed at, and we bring as much information as we can to the court so that the courts have more information to make a good decision for the kids that are involved under their care.
And just so people don't get confused, court can be confusing. It's intimidating for anyone. Even sometimes as a lawyer, you go into court and you're like, you're amped up a little bit. It's part of the building.
Right.
It's kind of set up to make you nervous, I think. So in some of these cases, the CASA kind of explain in more detail what their role is. Because there might be an attorney on one side, there might be another attorney, they might be fighting with each other, the kids in the middle. What's the CASA doing in the case?
The CASA has a really unique role in that it is our goal to always keep the best interest of the kids in the forefront of the court. So our volunteers have a court order from the judge that gives them access to see the child, to talk to their teachers, to talk to their doctors, to visit with the child and get to know that child and to know what they want, what the kids want the court to know. Where do the kids want to live? How are the kids doing? So our volunteers do a lot of work outside the court advocating for kids. Maybe it's helping them navigate and get needed services at school, or helping them get into therapy, or helping the right paperwork get submitted. So we do a lot of advocacy outside of court. We have a really fabulous staff who understands the court system, and that's their job, is to help the CASAs when they actually come here to court. Okay. One of our staff members always comes to court with the volunteers to support them so that they have that support. They know the kids the best, but our staff knows the system, and together it makes a really good partnership.
So they're not flying solo when they come in here, not knowing what's going to happen in court. They're prepared because you guys have them prepared.
Yeah, they're very well prepared. Our staff will talk to them about court, what's coming up, what to expect. What surprises most people is juvenile court is not as adversarial as other courts. We joke that it's not a lot like court TV. Here it isn't about punishment. It's about how can we reunify a family and what services can be put into place to help that family be a successful unit. And if that family can't be reunified, how do we get that child to a safe, permanent home as soon as we can? We don't want kids to linger in the system. And we know systems and bureaucracies don't raise kids well. Kids need to be with families.
Yeah.
So how can we get them to a safe, permanent home?
And I would assume, and I've never been in court with a CASA on a case, since the CASA is independent, they're not, on either side of the argument, really. They're just here speaking on what the kid would like to happen. I'm assuming judges take that to heart, because they're an independent person here, right? And do they listen to them?
I think they do. I believe that when we've done our job well, that our volunteers are one piece of the puzzle. We've given the courts more information to make a well-informed decision for that child. They have to look at the law. They have to listen to all the witnesses and make that decision.
For sure.
But what we know is our CASAs know our kids. And when we've given the court the information, it helps them make better decisions for the kids' future.
Just have more info because of the CASA's work. How much time are the CASAs putting in on a case in a month, let's say?
So typically the volunteers spend between 6 to 8 hours a month visiting with their parachute kids. So there are times when a case gets more involved and it goes up, but historically it's been that for about the last 25 years.
Okay.
It's pretty, we are different than some other organizations in that you do build a relationship with the kids, but your goal is advocacy. So how can we get the court more information and how can we help get the kids through the system?
And how long has CASA been around in Butler County? I know there's a national organization, but how long has the one in Butler County been doing this work, helping the kids in our community?
So this is the start of our 35th year, and we've trained 608 volunteers, and gosh, we've served just about 2,800 kids. And it's community volunteers who care and want to make a difference. So our volunteers are diverse, like our community, and it's a really good match.
Why do you how long have you been working for CASA?
This is the start of my 32nd year.
So you've been here since almost the very beginning.
1990.
1990. Why did you get involved in an organization like this? And then why did you stay as long as you have? Because it had to take some dedication to stay in a job like this that long.
I think I was drawn to the mission. Helping kids, I think, kind of tugs at everyone's heartstring. And when I took this, my husband was kind of like, ooh, what are you going to do? And I have to say that our volunteers are why I've been able to stay here this long. There are some days that the cases are hard and it's challenging to hear about child abuse and neglect, and it's challenging for our volunteers. But our volunteers bring such energy and passion for kids that it's kind of contagious. And they're a huge part of why our staff is able to do this work. The judge and the court appreciate that it's someone outside the system, maybe bringing new ideas and a different approach to how we do things. And I think that's why our staff, and I know that's why I've been able to stay here so long, is our volunteers are just amazing people.
You kind of already answered the question I was going to ask was, I know dealing with this stuff and seeing what happens to kids in our community over and over and over again over 32 years, that can really eat it at you, in your own personal life. Just listening to it all the time just a lot of negative things happen. And everyone knows that it happens, but being here, seeing it, knowing it, and seeing the pictures and hearing the stories is a different level of knowing. And so the reason you've been able to stick with it is because of all the new CASAs bringing new eyes, and they're wanting to help, and it kind of reinvigorates you to keep going, I guess.
It does. And I believe that all of our kids benefit from having a caring, competent, and adult in their life. That's a gift. And families deserve to raise kids, and it's great when we can get families reunified. And it's great when we can get kids into permanent homes. And there's some ups and downs along the way. But I believe in my heart that all of our kids benefit from having caring adults in their lives. And I think our volunteers are that for a lot of kids.
Just the CASA themselves, just somebody caring for them.
They're not used to adults who follow through with commitment and keep their word. And even some of our older teenagers have asked the CASAs, why are you coming to see me? You don't get paid to come and see me? They know that they're in the system, and to have someone who wants to spend time with them is something new to some kids.
Just for free.
Just for free.
And it's like shocks them. That's sad, but
it is.
Where do you find where do CASAs, I guess, find you, or where do you find CASAs people to volunteer? How do you get them?
We do a lot of outreach. Our Facebook page, we talk to churches, we talk to Kiwanis. I think one of the things that we have found over the years is people who are involved are people who are involved. The same people volunteer and get involved and get things done. We have Casas that have GEDs to PhDs. So our volunteers are very diverse, and we want our volunteers to be diverse to match our community and match the children that we serve.
I think that's really important to point that out, because a CASA, court-appointed special advocate, that court-appointed part, I think a lot of people are going to assume like, oh, you probably have to maybe not have a PhD, but you had to go to college, you have to be, some kind of special schooling to do that. And you said you've had people who haven't graduated high school doing it, and they may very well be great CASAs, and they may be some of the best, because some of these kids are maybe going to, not, see themselves as talking to someone with a PhD, knowing where they're from, So how do you reach people like that who maybe doubt that they're even able to be a CASA? I mean, obviously we're doing this video now, but I mean...
one of the things that we do is we have a CASA 101. We post those on our website and our Facebook. They're kind of information sessions where people can come and ask information and get questions answered on what is it, what's the role. We have a really extensive training to get volunteers ready for to work with a family. It's about 30 hours. This is a pretty serious volunteer opportunity. Yeah. So we do a lot of training with volunteers. We provide a lot of support.
Yeah.
So
you get a lot of older people, younger people, all over?
It's all over. When I look at our demographics, about 50 to 60% work, but you do have to have some flexibility to attend court and go to meetings. Mm-hmm. We schedule court hearings out about every 3 months. They're pretty similar to a doctor's appointment. You're scheduling the next one when you're there, in advance. I think the volunteers who do it have time, flexibility, and that's a huge asset.
How long does the case, and I already know probably just because I'm a lawyer, it's probably going to depend, but how you go through the training, you're a CASA, you get a kid's case. How long are you with one child till it comes to some kind of end?
Our hope and goal is that the CASA is with the child from the beginning to end, that they're going to know their whole story from the time they came into the system until the time they go out of the system. So during training, we ask for a 1-year commitment. Most of our cases average about 18 months. And it takes time to change habits and deal with systems to access services. On rare occasion, if our kids aren't going to go home, those cases last probably about 2 years.
Okay.
The court and Children's Services wants to make sure everything has been exhausted before a child would not go home.
Not go home to their biological parents or whoever had custody, and then they're going to be placed in some kind of other with another family member maybe, or some kind of foster.
Yeah, Children's Services works really diligently to place kids with relatives, and CASAs have even found relatives. Okay. Kids might say, what about my Aunt Mary? And we can pass that information on to Children's Services. So Children's Services looks really hard at family, as does CASA. Adoption is the last option, because kids deserve to be raised with family if that's a possibility. And if not, then we look towards adoption.
Yeah. How have you had CASAs who've done one case and then finished that and then done another one and done another one? I mean, I guess maybe who's the longest running CASA? You don't have to give me their name, but like 10 years? Something?
No, one of my CASAs just retired after 20 years.
They did it for 20 years?
She did it for 20 years, and she was continually on a case for 20 years.
That's amazing. Just for free for 20 years?
Just for free. She had a passion for it. And I asked her one time how she did it. How did you stay with us for 20 years? What do we need to look for? And she says, I always saw the small successes, and you just keep going and
finding the positives.
All the negatives. It's the little things that keep you doing this. On the average, our average is 3 to 4 years. Some CASAs absolutely take it. They do one case and work with one family and say, I'm glad I did this, but this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And others do several cases before they decide.
But doing one case is still great. I mean,
one case is fabulous. It absolutely will have an impact on your life and a child's life.
Since you guys have been doing this since 35 years, I mean, obviously just by the math, some of these kids that you guys were helping in the 80s and 90s they're adults now.
Yeah.
Do you know some of them? Are some of them doing well? I mean, have any of them became a CASA after, I guess? That'd be cool.
Not that I know of. That's the interesting part. We're working with kids and families in a very chaotic time in their life. Yeah. So we often don't know the follow-up.
Yeah.
I do know one of the kids that we worked with, probably about 10 years ago, has just started college and wants to be an attorney.
That's awesome.
So that's kind of exciting. Her CASA was in college at Miami when she was assigned to her. And that Casa went on to be an attorney and a prosecutor in another county and has stayed in touch with that child for all these years. And now that child is in college.
That's amazing.
So it's really exciting to kind of hear that story and hear that that child is doing so well.
Okay. How many how many current Casas do we have on cases right now?
Right now we have about 60 Casas on cases, which is a little low for us. We typically average between 75 to 80 Casas in any year serving kids.
Why do you think there's been a dip? COVID or a little bit of everything?
I think in part COVID, I think we weren't able to recruit as much and do as much outreach and talking at community events. And a lot of our Casas have retired in the last couple of years. People who maybe are older or have more health concerns may be a little more cautious right now. So the numbers are a little lower. Unfortunately, that meant there was 90 kids that we couldn't serve last year.
So even though we normally had 80, that wouldn't have even been enough. 60 is definitely not enough. So there's kids that the court asks us to send to Casa for that we have to turn away?
Yes.
Every year?
Every year.
That's no good.
It's no good. It's hard. I would love to have a Casa on every child. I think kids benefit, and it's hard choices to make, like which child we can give an advocate to and which child we can't.
How do you choose? I mean, it's an awful decision to make, I'm guessing.
It's really hard. I look at the volunteer skill set and I look at the placement where the child is placed, and we actually assess for safety. If it's a case where Children's Services is not able to go out into the home easily or has huge safety concerns, then we leave that to the professionals to deal with that family. So
we're not putting Casas.
We're not going to put a volunteer in a dangerous situation. So we assess for safety as well when we are considering the cases.
So obviously we're asking if there's more volunteers, get a hold of you. And where are you guys located? Where's your building? I know it's hard to find.
Our building is a little tricky to find. We're on the grounds of the Judge Niehaus Juvenile Court Complex. The court has been a huge supporter of Parachute over the years and gives us space in kind. So we're in what used to be a halfway house. It makes a perfect home for us. We're situated between Juvenile Court and Children's Services.
All right. And then I guess a lot of people are, hopefully some people listen to this and they say, hey, that sounds like something I'd like to do. That'd make the whole video worth it if one person did it. But there's going to be a lot of other people who, this story maybe pulls their heartstring enough, but they're like, this isn't the time for me, or I don't think I'd be good at that, but they want to help. How else can people potentially help the program?
There's a lot of different ways to help. If you're involved with a club or group, have us come and talk to your club and group about ways to get involved with Casa. Parachute's a 501c3, so we raise our own funds. So we do a lot of fundraising and events. And also just by sharing our Facebook page and our website and telling people about who we are and what we do. We understand that it has to be the right time in people's lives to commit to being a Casa. And I've had people tell me when I retire in 5 years, and 5 years later they find me. So I think we just have to plant that seed. And I think that's something that everyone in the community can help us with, is letting others know what we are and what we do.
And I know the answer to this, but I guess I'll just maybe say, and you can speak more to it. I know, like a lot of volunteer positions, there's a lot of boys in this that need a Casa, young kids that are males, and we don't have as many male Casas.
Right.
And sometimes that's good, just to have, it's not a father figure, but just a male figure in their life. And what percentage of the Casas are female to male?
I want to say it's maybe 85% female and 15% male. And we have some really neat, we have a husband and wife Casa team. We have a mother-daughter Casa team.
They can, two Casas can be on a case
together?
Yeah,
they can absolutely do that.
I didn't even know that.
So
that might be fun for some people, or make it more likely if you had a partner.
Yeah, a little more comforting to kind of start out that way. But I think when we have male Casas, especially for some of our male kids, it's good to see a positive guy in their life. They're not, oftentimes the kids that we work with, the men that they haven't worked with, it hasn't been a positive experience. Yeah. So I think that's a double benefit for our kids. They're getting advocacy and they're getting a positive male in their lives.
You guys are located in Hamilton, but you're helping kids the whole county, and you get kids from every town in Butler County.
Yes, correct? We serve kids all over Butler County. So Butler County Children's Services covers the entire area, as does our juvenile court.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add? I mean, I know the work's hard and you have a passion for it. I've known you quite a few years now. I sit on the board.
Thank you for that.
Just had our meeting Monday. But what else, what else you'd like people to know about these kids and about the Casas? I think it's a story of both that you should tell. The kids need help, but the volunteers, they get a lot out of it too.
I think most people who come to us are nervous about doing this role, and they're surprised at how much they know about advocacy and kids before they start. I really believe that people who care can make a difference with kids. And I think if people have the time, 6 to 8 hours a month isn't a lot, and it can make a huge impact for kids and families down the road. One of the questions we get most often is, how do the families respond? And one of the things I'm most thankful for is Parachute was set up as a private nonprofit. So when our volunteers go out and they get to meet a family and they can say, I'm not a part of the system, I'm not a part of the court, I'm a volunteer, and my only job is to get to know your kids and let the court know how your kids are doing, it helps bridge a gap. And a lot of the Casas are surprised at how much empathy they have. A lot of parents in the system are working really hard with the best they can to take care of their kids. And I think Casas learn from them, and it's a fabulous partnership.
Yeah, so anyone, like you said just a second ago, anyone who cares about a kid could be a good Casa. Don't doubt the impact you could have. A lot of times we doubt what what we're good at. We're our own worst critic. But if you just care about a kid and have a few hours a week, that'd be enough.
It'll make
you
a
can
difference.
work with that, can't you?
I can work with that. And one of our volunteers, when we would do our initial training, said, I was so nervous that what if I messed this up? And she said to our class, she said, I sat back and I thought, anything I do is more than they would have if I wasn't doing it. And she said she just, from then on, had this sense of calm, like, okay, I can do this. And, I want people to know that we have great staff who are there to support them. People already advocate in their day-to-day lives, whether it's for their families, their kids, their spouses, their grandparents, themselves. We have really great staff who can help them learn how to do it within the juvenile court and the child welfare system.
And you'd have some attorneys on staff that know the court
absolutely.
So they're not going to be lost. They're going to have a lot of support, and they're going to learn a lot.
Absolutely.
Well, Tonya, I appreciate it. If you have anything else to add, you can, but I'm really glad you sat down with us. Hopefully we can get the word out get some more Casas, helping more kids.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for talking about us, Justin. If people have questions, check out our Facebook pages or feel free to call us, and we're glad to answer any questions people have.
All right, thank you, Tonya.
Thank you.
What would that number be?
Oh yeah, the phone number.
513-867-5010.
We'll put the link to the website and everything in our Facebook and everything.
Can you say that one more time?
513-867-5010.
We'll cut that and put it in somewhere.
Yeah.